All right. That was one of my favorite spots. I love Mira. Thank you so much for providing lunch today. And thank you so much to our sponsors for lunch, Grant Makers for Girls of Color. They were not able to be here today, but we give it up to them, and thanks for providing the food. Because you listen better when you're fed, right? That's right. I hope you're all ready to listen. We're gonna turn now to our red table talk. And let our panelists introduce themselves. And this was supposed to be like, envision with me, if you will, a big round table with all these lovely faces sitting around it. Unfortunately, we wanted our folks in the Zoom world to be able to see, and the table is just too low, so we weren't going to be able to make it work. So we're going to have this conversation sans red table, but it's going to still be fantastic and powerful. And I'll turn it over to you all to introduce yourselves and ask some questions and have some conversation, and that is all. I'll take it away.
Who's going first?
Yeah, something else. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael D. Davis Thomas. I am a person with lived experience. I spent 11 years in the Michigan child welfare system. Started out on the juvenile side and ended out on the foster care side. I've been in over 43 residential facilities. Came out very institutionalized, had to find myself and do my work. And now I'm a podcaster. I sit on over 16 different boards. I work 6 jobs while going to school full time, studying political science, law and society with a minor in public administration. 26. And yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Lodge. I am a lived expert. I, currently successfully transitioned out, but a lot of those disparities and kind of past experiences have, kind of cultivated an advocacy. I'm currently in the venture capital space, particularly in impact investing. But for at least 6 years, I've been kind of advocating on the child welfare. And yeah, I was able to successfully navigate, earn a lot of my education, but still yet looking back, we have a lot of disparities within the child welfare system and still advocating to this day. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at.
My name is Robyn Wind Tiger. I'm also a lived expert. I live on the Muskogee Creek Reservation in Oklahoma. I am Muskogee Creek with Cherokee descendancy. I have been raising my grandson. He's 9.5 since the day before he turned 4 months old. And I also, in most of my adult career, worked in Indian child welfare, most notably in foster care leadership. I'm coming at this from 2 directions, I guess, today, and so happy to be here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christina Simmons. I am the parent of 6 beautiful children, and I have lived expertise as well. We navigated the system to get them back after they were removed from me or after they were torn away from me. And so we're here to help the next family. Thank you for having me.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shemia Dillard. I am a former system involved foster youth and juvenile justice youth, as well as a former young mother. I currently work with Justice and Joy National Collaborative, formerly known as National Princeton, and I advocate for young mothers. Yeah. Oh, y'all can't hear me? Y'all hear nothing I said. I was about to say, I'm not about to do that all over again. Okay, wait. Oh, just the end. Y'all, I'm echoing now. Y'all, so if I'm echoing, that's a good thing. All right, y'all. Well, y'all said just the end. Well, I currently work for Justice and Joy National Collaborative. I'm a senior associate on the policy and systems change focus area, and yeah, that's it.
I guess. We're not at the table, but I'm gonna propose our first question for us to kind of conversate about. I guess since I'm the podcast, I'm gonna be the interim kind of host. Okay. What are some consequences of removal to children, parents, and to communities that aren't given enough attention or resources? Whoever want to start first.
Well, oh. What I was just gonna say is, I still use the word Indian too, like my auntie. But the consequences to Indian country or to tribes whenever a child is removed from them, I know that you've probably all heard the term federally recognized tribe of Indians. All of these tribes, the 500 and some odd that we have that are federally recognized, if we lose that federal recognition, we don't qualify for grants. They don't have to honor the treaties. We just, as far as the federal government is concerned, we no longer exist. One of the conditions of being federally recognized is that we have to have cultural practices that we pass on. If you take our babies away from us, you are taking away the possibility that we can continue on like we have for thousands and thousands of years. So that is why it's one of the many reasons why it's important for us to keep our babies with us, not only because we love them, they're our souls, but we have to have them so that the federal government acknowledges, even though we don't really need it, but we do kind of acknowledges that it gives us our recognition so that they honor the treaties that they put in place.
Yeah, no, just kind of pondering on this question. When you look at the economics of, kind of the disparities long-term for children, you know, what I believe is, keeping children with families, but at the same time, kind of, what are those educational resources, kind of like tying everything together for that child within that family, and what is the accessibility? I was telling a friend I was listening to a podcast by an economist, Raj Shetty, and he hit on a lot of topics of how underserved children are like falling behind, but then he hit on foster children. And so the disparities were, if not more, for foster youth. And taking those children out of their families, what we can, had, horrible effects. But I think what needs to happen, and kind of he suggested, just not taking children out from their families, but providing that accessibility that takes the pressure off the parents, while also expanding educational resources and opportunities. And he was talking about, having more, affluent communities use tax policies to assist those families who have, children who are struggling, and that creates it bridges the wealth gap, particularly in the foster welfare, the child welfare system. And he also talked about how white foster parents have more capital than Black foster parents. And then you look at the trends over time and you see, okay, if this kid was taken out of their home, they either end up in incarceration, but in reality, they didn't have a lot of the educational resources or, friendships or any of those things that like really allow a child to flourish. So.
Did anybody else want to go yet? No? Okay. Y'all can hear me? Oh, cool. To answer the question, I feel like the consequences, very little background. I was taken from my mother. My mother was taken from her mother. And just recently I found out that my auntie Her child was also taken from her. Like everybody's first was taken from them. And more to me, I also experienced that as a parent. My first child was separated from me. And I feel like sometimes when we watch the news or we watch different things, and you're like, the first thing that I hear people say, or we normally hear, is like, well, where was the parents? For me, when I entered the juvenile justice system, even though I was in foster care, I had a social worker and a probation officer, and still didn't get the resources I needed, I feel. You people ask, where's the parents? And it's like, when you separate that. I don't want to just generally call it love, but how they would have been nurtured. Everyone couldn't nurture me. The group homes couldn't nurture me. The facility, the jail, the detention couldn't nurture me. So when I was out there stealing, or I was out there, and you're like, somebody might catch me, and it's like, well, where are your parents at? And you should know better. First of all, I got $100 for my clothing allowance a year. It was $150 a year, or was it for hair? I think I was in one of the few counties that had hair allowance. And you separate people, or specifically speaking to my situation, you separate me from my family. Of course, you can learn to do hair, but as you all know, everybody has different textures and types of hair. I didn't learn certain stuff, so I'm like, shoot, let me go get this little, whatever I need, because I wasn't provided for. And then I went from one system to another system. And a little more to my story, again, answering the question, the consequences, I've noticed even with my own son, just to get him through high school, he just turned 18 on the 1st. He had to go to military school. Like, I'm proud of him for finishing, but I feel as though if I could have been a better parent, if I would have been given the chance, if I had been given the choice, I could have been a better parental figure for him. He wouldn't have had to been on the outskirts watching, oh, my mom graduated college, or, oh, my mom is going through this. Yeah, it would have been hard sometimes, because the 2 children that I do have at home have went through those things with me, and they were able to learn, like, okay, so this is why this is done, and this is how I need this to be done. But again, answering the question, I think the consequences is basically the system doing what it was designed to do, which was to separate and cause destruction.
Some of the consequences, because there's a lot of them, there's a lot of consequences of removal. I can think back to when my children were removed. Before my children were removed, they had good grades. They were just flourishing in school. When they were removed, their grades went down. My physical health went down. I mean, just a decline in the family in general. My oldest son is special needs. So no one was there to nurture him. No one knew what he needed. He don't talk. So what foster parent would be able to understand what he's saying if I'm not there? Nobody. And so we had to fight. I mean, we had to fight tooth and nail to get those babies back. And that's what we did. And now we're working in the youth justice system, fighting for parents. And I just hear this resounding, poverty is not neglect. And just to get folks to embrace that. If they need a bed, let's go pick it up and give them a bed. I mean, they need some jackets. Hey, look, let's go. I mean, what is so hard about supplying the family and supporting the family with monetary needs, or whatever practical support, mental health, whatever the family of origin needs to be successful? And that's what we see a lot of not being done. So.
Well, before I go to the next question, I guess I'll answer this. For me, one of the biggest consequences, and I say this in combination in my personal story, it was a necessary evil for me to be removed. I don't feel like all options was given for me to be removed and placed with a family that was stable and safe. And I say that because I had a cousin when I was on the juvenile side, and they were wondering why Michael was doing whatever and everything. I had a cousin that was in Florida. He already, at that point in time, he's had him on my podcast. He said he had fostered and adopted too, but fostered over 200 kids. I had a cousin that's already, doing this, and the judge would not release me to go and be with him. He wrote a letter, wanted to be a support. It's one of my biggest supporters on my podcast, but they wouldn't allow him to do that. And for me, one of the biggest consequences of being removed that through healing and understanding different avenues, family is a big part of you growing into your identity. Learning the integral parts of, in my place, what it meant to be a Black man, what it meant to be a Black man that came from this family, the different traditions, the different aspects of what we had endured, how did we get here to Michigan, I missed out on. And that's a two-sided thing because I missed out on it because of the lack of support they had to parent me. But also, I missed out on it because I had an opportunity to go stay with other aspects of my family, and it wasn't given to me. So I share that. The next question here: what are some methods of preventing removal that aren't given enough attention or resources?
So I'll go first. I think that you need to build up trust if you're a social worker, or if you are you're going to do this work with a particular family. If you're an attorney, CASA, or whatever, especially with underserved populations, maybe because we don't trust you. I mean, I was a caseworker as well, and I didn't trust me half the time. But I know that if I went into, a particular community in northeastern Oklahoma, which is nothing but natives, that if I drive in a government vehicle, I'm not getting any questions answered from nobody, and that's the truth. But whenever I got my little guy, he was really hurt. I mean, there were everything that you can fracture on a 4-month-old baby was fractured. But what I didn't get was trust from the caseworkers. When I tell you that I know that my child, my grandbaby's daddy, which is was my son, I know that child would never hurt anything. He brought home injured animals all the time, even flies. He was a very gentle, big but gentle person. But I could also tell you that he had a drinking problem. So if that caseworker had trusted me and listened to me so that I can help us, maybe we could have prevented the baby being in custody for 4.5 years, and me, spending my entire 401k in retirement on legal fees. Maybe we could have prevented that. So I think that just changing your perspective and understanding that you may have bias that you don't even know that you have. I'm just going to say something real quick that my friend uses this analogy all the time, and it's true. So in Oklahoma, we have a high Indian population, obviously, but there was a tribal caseworker, a Department of Human Service caseworker, and a police officer that walked into someone's home, and they had just harvested a deer because it was deer season. So you know, they were processing on the table, and the sheriff says, "Oh, I see weapons. They've got weapons laying around." The state caseworker says, "It's a bloody mess in here. This is dangerous." The tribal caseworker says, "Oh, they got a lot of food." You know, so it's your perspective. It's how you look at things. So I think if we could all just take a second, not automatically assume that there is immediate danger unless there is. I admit my baby was pretty hurt and he needed to be taken into custody, or maybe not. Maybe they could have just handed him over and said, "Hey, can you take care of this baby until we figure out what happened or who did it," which they never did find out. I'll pass now because I can talk all day.
I'll piggyback off of what you said, Robyn, a non-judgment, non-bias approach. Even in schools, when we have the mandated reporting, so, you know, a teacher observes something that she think, you know, the child may be in danger, and then she reports that. Why not just call the parents and say, "Hey, can you come in? You know, I have something that I want to talk to you about." You know, I'm pretty sure a parent will come and talk. We don't have to just assume this child is in danger. Let's go save them from their family. We run into that a lot in the state of Mississippi. We run into a lot of judgment, race, and I see it day in, day out. And I was talking earlier and I said, change. Nobody wants to embrace it. Change, we need change. There must be change. We have to have change in order to see those 2.4 million children not be removed from their homes, not be removed from their families, even with the kinship. Why not let our children go home to an aunt, to an uncle, to a cousin? Why do they have to be taken, harvested into another family that's total strangers? And it's hurtful, but it's hurtful and it's impactful because it impacts those children for the rest of their lives. And so if we can say anything, you know, what I strive to do in my community is be the change that I want to see. And I'll pass.
When it comes to methods of prevention, I would say training. And in my thoughts, I would like to see a different, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but curriculum for case managers and just people within the system that are doing this work, whether it's a judge, attorney, case manager, whoever. I can't remember who said it in the previous panel, but they stated that some of these people, these workers are straight out of college making decisions. And we mentioned, like, have you even had children yet? Like, can you even resonate with what you're doing? So I personally, like, in a perfect world, envision like seeing a curriculum or some type of training. Just, I'm trying to put it into words, but I want to see people make it make sense. If I visualize things a lot. Like, I like things drawn out. I like things simple. I like it. So I have to say this. A personal stories was on my case plan. It was told that I would not tell the baby to shut up. Yes, a little backstory. I was 15 when I was pregnant. I was 18 when I had my son. When you're from a different community, saying shut up doesn't mean you're saying shut up. They put it on my case plan, guys. They put it on not a federal document, but a government a contract saying I wouldn't tell my baby to shut up. So you're saying that basically I meant harm to my child, that I wanted to harm my child. I'm some big bad monster. No, I want you to shut up. Baby, please. Like literally when I had said it and my case manager had heard about it, I was bouncing my son in a bouncer. I remember it to this day. For whatever reason, guys, there was no the battery vibrator in the back. So I had to foot bounce him. And he was just, mind you, I had him at 16. He was 8 pounds, 2.6 ounces. Like I said, I was 16. I carried him to term. I want him to shut up. So for me, that being held against me when I meant no harm to this bundle of joy that I have never met before, this actual situation that I'm dealing with that I never dealt with before. I was raised as an only child. There was no babies in the home for me. I'm being the best mother naturally that I knew how to be. And for someone to turn around and put that on a contract and like, you don't know what you're doing. And why would you say that? Because you didn't come from my community. You didn't come from my culture once again. So you're removing someone away from their culture, away from their things, and making it seem like we're out to get them. So for me, I would like to see some type of training to get people to understand, like, don't let your biases project onto other people and cause harm for generations.
Um, Thank you for sharing. Uh, I, for most of these, I have a kind of a different upbringing. I was kind of removed and adopted. Then I went back into the system. But during my adoption, I went back into the system not because of my adopted father had passed away from cancer, so the family was fighting over money. But during my time of removal, you know, being placed in and being adopted, right? I think, and I don't know if there is a system like this. There needs to be some sort of proxy, some sort of, vetting if you are going to remove somebody. My dad, and bless him, but like he was a minister, and it was very much like, as soon as I got into his house, very little, I was a baby, but all I could remember was education, education, education. And I had a very, I think my situation was a little bit more of a blessing. But it was, I had a DCBS worker who, was like, hey, like they vetted my adopted parents. And I thought, that was a good thing. And they also tried, visitations with my real mother. She was not in the best shape. And I had a little sister that I had to look after as well. And so I I think there needs to be some sort of proxy or vetting, just even in the removal process, that hey, like this parent is good, we should offer them resources to get back on their feet. And kind of, if the child is, wanting to go back to their family, I think that's, what we should be doing. But providing, you have rehabilitation centers, you have, resources. Those women, men who have children that were removed, I do think that is like, critical. But there will always have to be some sort of vetting or proxy of why someone is, taken away from their family. My mom was, on drugs, very much not in a good shape. And then when they did say, hey, why don't they go with their uncle, or wasn't a good idea. And finally, my adopted father said no, because at least, you have to have someone in the room to say, especially if you're a child, this is not a good idea. And I, despite other people's, uh, experiences with these, I do think, if we want to keep children with families, I think there has to be some sort of line that's like, hey, this is a lot. And I don't think I would kind of be up here on this panel. I don't think I would have pursued education if, I had stayed in that environment. And a lot of the system was, hey, maybe we should, put this child back into his setting. Wasn't a good idea. And I also think, even today, my sister, who love her to death, but her life is way better. But I think if you are going to remove a child, the people who you're removing them to need to be vetted. Like, and I don't know the questions. I don't know what, they need to go through. But there has to be some sort of measurement in which we can say, hey, these folks are good. And or if the family is, trying to get back on their feet, they're ready, and not try to hold that over them as some courts do. Instead, we need to be working kind of on both ends to make sure that the child is stable and at peace with whatever setting they go to. But my background very much different than the rest, but still it was education, education, education. And I think that's what needs to be, if that child is to be removed, or, giving the resources to the parents at the same time. That's just,
Something that stuck out to me was on last night's panel, and it stuck out to me after what you just said, and I do a lot of, like, we call them grow panels, where you have the foster parents and the adoptive parents and people that are going to get their license. And they sit in here, and then almost every time there's that one or multiple different people say, how do you handle when a kid is returned back home? And that stick out to me, because I believe it was Sandra that mentioned it about, a lot of people seeking to be foster parents or to be adoptive parents, not in the aspects of possibly being a coach, a mentor, a role model to help that parent, that have lost their kid for whatever circumstance or reason that life has brought. But they're wanting to take on that role of being a parent due to whatever circumstance that they have made going on. And there's one person I do this panel with, and she's always speaking like, when we took on this role, our role was never to be adoptive parents. We took on this role to always pursue trying to mentor, trying to support those parents and get those kids back home. Because we know that we can't ever compare to what it's like to be with family, being at home. And that struck out to me, because when I think about what methods and the aspect of, prevention and trying to limit removal, I think about back in the day. And I know when we talk about back in the day, it's bittersweet, because there's some bad back in the day, and then there's those moments in time in our culture and with our people that our people made us proud. And I remember being with my mom. She was a single parent at that time. My dad just up and left one day. And my mom, granted, she had some things to do and work on for herself, and she did the best that she could. And I can say that now, seeing from her lens, that she didn't have tools to be a good parent. And that what ultimately led to her decision-making and abusing me. But there was a time when she lost a job, couldn't make it. For some reason, the food stamps wasn't enough, that people would rally around on the block and bring a box of canned goods, and I'm talking about the canned goods that it just said grape. It was just grape juice. You had the Kick cereal and stuff like that. So, it was the little things in humanity, not judging her, not, being a gossip meal, but trying to support her and trying to support us. Unfortunately, life happens. And I learned as I start to understand my story that my older brother, way before I was born, had allegation brought up through CPS. And when I heard that, being in this work, I was like, was there no, like, that was a red notice right there. That was the knock at the door. That was the cry for help. You know, there was nothing given to her to support her. And behold, I came along, now I'm in the system. I tell my story to some of the youth and stuff like that in my community, and they always ask me, like, you know, what about your siblings? I was like, well, my siblings had different dads, they got to go with their extended family, but my dad abandoned me. And I was left there, with someone who needed help mentally, needed support, and understanding my mom and what she went through. There was very much the little girl that never got to grow up trying to raise us.
I was just gonna say, thank you for that. I grew up with 5 foster brothers, all African American, all came from different backgrounds as well. And that's when I went back into the foster care system. All of them were young men, but they didn't have mentors or support systems. But there was this woman named Imogene Hines, and she was a Black woman. And she had, was a foster parent for over like 60 children in Kentucky throughout her lifetime. And she really did, a lot of those young men wanted to go back home. But every time they would come back, guess what would happen? They were on drugs. They were, smoking, just a lot of bad stuff. And so I do think that, I think it does matter on like kind of when we are removing children, or if we're trying to get children back to their families, that, you do have a sort of trend line that can like be recognized about their development. And so, yeah, not, or, not against, not for the removal of children, but I do, believe in kind of, there has to be a growth traction of that child in a developing stage that is positive, because now all 5 of those young men today, they all have been to prison because they had went back to their families. And if you are in an environment, and this is an economist, you are 77% more likely to pursue education and positive outcomes if you're in a more positive role model environment. And that's just the data. That's just stats. And so I do kind of, am concerned about that as well. So do we have foster parents, and we're helping folks in the system, develop? So.
Yeah.
While we're waiting on somebody to come up here and ask the questions, can I just expand upon what he just said? I think he's right. But what we need to do is we need to enable our communities to be able to do that for ourselves, for our own children, not, we do need all these things that he just said for our young men and young women to grow up to lead us later and take care of us when we're older. But our communities have to do that, we have to find ways so that our communities can do that for our own selves, not being told what to do and when.
Go ahead. I think it's
Okay, thank you, ma'am. as I was listening, what you describe it, Ms. Dillard, that's horrifying. You were talking about the last three generations of the firstborn being taken. That's right off the plantation. That's a direct historical contextualization of really of the story of what we're seeing today. And I'm glad that your panel is here today. I hear a lot of reformist talk, but when it's more community-based, it's from the community and its solutions. That's how it was last year when I went to this conference. So it's good y'all here. One of the things I wanted to mention is there's a book by Dr. Diane Stewart. It's called America's War on Black Love and African-American Marriage. And so that is what y'all's situation is describing, contextualizing. And that's important. I know you mentioned, Mr. Lodge, about the men, young boys going to prison because with the families. And in this book, it describes the contextualization and historical analogy of what has occurred. There's a book by Tasley McKay called Stolen Wealth, Hidden Power, Reparations for Mass Incarceration. My name is Tamiko. I'm a cultural anthropologist, and I'm the director of Asian People in Prison. We're having a summit next week, on mass incarceration reparations, the cost to Black women, and how it has impacted. It's going to be in Philadelphia. Well, I was interested in, I wanted to ask Ms. Simmons and Ms. Robyn, and it was such a treat to have our Native brothers and sisters here. And you working with the parents. One of the things that's not being mentioned, I don't hear enough of, because this is all law that's emboldening, that's capitalizing off of Black bodies and people of color, indigenous. I don't hear enough talk of, and I'm glad it was introduced early, of abolition. We have no choice but the abolition in this situation. It is no choice, is no reform, no negotiate. Folks do not negotiate. They do not, ain't no morality. What's your thoughts on abolition? I don't hear enough of restorative justice. I don't hear the transitional justice. The models you mentioned about working with the parents and what's going on in Mississippi, that's straight out plantation, that's just historical. How can we begin to, models to demonstrate justice within our own community, which you was just saying? The judge now allowing you to be with your supporter. That's straight out of decimation on the Black man, constantly, historical timeline. Give me some examples, some models. That's what we're working on in Philadelphia and Maryland. How can we as a community not be so reliant on the system? Don't even call them. I grew up with a bunch of children because my mama was always knew that no child was gonna go into the system. And I practiced the same thing. I've raised 5 and 6 nieces and nephews. Ain't nobody going into the system, better not make no call. That was how it was. So give me some examples, some models. That's what we're working on right now in Philadelphia and Maryland. I appreciate y'all.
Well, I was gonna start, we have to go to the communities. We have to go to the sources. We have to go to the Section 8 offices. We have to go to the TANF offices. That's where they're at. I mean, we have to reach out to them. I mean, we have to make ourselves available. And so here in Mississippi, that's what I do. I go sit on their couches. I go listen to their stories. They tell me what they need. They know. You know, what do you need? Okay, I need this, that, and the third. Okay, let's go get it. Let's go get it. You know, and that's what we do. Get in my car, whatever. And we'll pack that little car with clothes, shoes, or whatever, and we're gonna bring it back to your house. You know, and that's just what we do day in and day out. You know, we're there for them. Look, we don't work for the system because they're gonna first make sure they can trust you. You know, you're not just going in, they're gonna make sure they can trust you. And I think building relationships with people outside of the child welfare system, you know, where they can trust that if I go get this bed for you, you're not going to report to the social worker that my children didn't have a bed. You know, and actually working with the people, they know what they need. They don't need anybody telling them that they need to do parenting classes. They know what they need. They go talk to grandma, and grandma, what I need to do. This is what you do, baby. She gonna tell them. You know, and it's just, you know, being told what to do, being dehumanized. We have our own system. We already had our own way. And that's what we need to move forward. Relationship, trust-based relationships working in communities, working with our families, being a part of a community. If everybody can do a little, nobody has to do it all, but everybody can do a little bit of something.
Like,
Okay, so I think I want to address this more as a comment because there isn't a handbook that I know of, maybe now, about parenting. Okay, that whole handbook, you have to get a license to drive. You want to be a social worker, you got to go to school for that so you can get credentialed. And so when you look at the dynamic itself and the definition and meaning of parenting, you all have given us experiences and exposures to what you felt parenting looked like for you all and how you're making that adjustment. How do we then take this system and encapsulate it to the effect that you cannot just be textbook, but you got to go out. You have to come out of that box to bring in something different to make it work. If you're making it work, says the child was removed from the home for whatever the extenuating circumstances it was. But then you have Mr. Lodge here who said that that worked for him. What worked for him may not have worked for Miss Dillard. But how do you take both of those situations and turn it into a more positive affirmation for the entire family? And I think that what I hear is that's not part of the model. So how do we make it part of the model for success? Because if we want things to work, the old cliche is in order for you to do something to make it work differently than what you tried, you got to keep doing something different. Because if you keep doing the same thing, that's the definition of insanity, and it won't work. So where's that blueprint? Where's the targeted audience? Where's the cliche strategy that we have to put in place in order to make this effective? So I want to hear more about that. What can we target? What blueprint can we develop and then keep developing so that it works for our people and our families?
Thank you so much for bringing forward that question and or comment, I guess. And I know that these folks could probably talk to you about that a little bit, about what they think those ingredients are going to be and something like that. But we'll have a little bit more time in our next panel to talk about some more solutions. But I first want to just say thank you to all of you for coming. So much power on this stage, so much love on this stage. Each of you guys have been so important in my life, and I'm just so glad that I got to do a little bit of this with you today. So thank you. We're going to take about a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back for our next panel. So stretch your legs. Don't go far though.